The game of rugby league is 100 years old. It was created amid anger and dispute in a room in the George Hotel in Huddersfield. It was there in 1895 that a group of representatives of Northern Rugby Union clubs met and made a decision that divided the game in bitter dispute.
We need to make a stand, gentlemen. I think the time has come for us to form our own union. A Northern Rugby Football Union. Do I have your support?
I second.
Let's see a show of hands. All those in favour?
Aye.
And against?
Bloody Dewsbury.
There was nothing trivial about the decision taken here or the consequences. One writer said that as an act of social insurrection could be compared with the resistance shown by half a dozen farm labourers at Tolpuddle 61 years earlier. In 1888, the then president of the Rugby Football Union, one Arthur Budd, declared that all the problems of his game were due to the advent of the working man. The history of rugby league has been written by the distinguished journalist and author Geoffrey Moorhouse, a lifelong fan of the game.
Most of the people playing it in the north were working class men. They worked down the mines and in factories and so forth. Whereas the people who tended to play rugby in the south tended to be public school boys in professions. And in those days, there was no such thing as a 5-day week. I mean, work didn't stop until after lunch on Saturday. And it meant they had to stop work early, and they missed half a day's wage. And they couldn't afford to. I mean, they were having a job to make ends meet. And so the Northern Union authorities said, we want to pay our players for matches that they play. They didn't want to pay a weekly wage. They simply wanted to compensate their players for the money that they lost at work. And so, yes, its origins are very firmly sort of socio-economic, political.
We're in early again. You know the reason being is to get your heads on. Last 2 games we've played have been very lax. This could be your last one here.
The game has always drunk deep at its tap root. For the past 100 years, rugby league in England has been as potent a North Country symbol as Coronation Street, brass bands and a Lowry painting. It has tried to expand its boundaries but has failed, particularly in the south of England, which has remained singularly indifferent to the game's charms. What a century of inbreeding has produced is a game more attuned to its setting and its supporters than any I can think of. It is more than an entertainment. It is a way of life.
It's addressed the feelings of close communities in areas such as Wakefield, Featherstone, Castleford, mining communities who in many instances have turned to rugby league as an outlet from other struggles, particularly in the mining industry, in areas such as this. Rugby league has been integral to those struggles.
Rugby league in Featherstone is like a wall in Featherstone, or a street in Featherstone, or a neighbour that you'd get to know, and you don't really fall in love with that. You just recognise it as being part and parcel of the fabric of your community.
We have no dividing barriers. We all stand in the same area. We stand next to each other, different colours. There's a family love of the game. There's a deep-seated respect for the game and its participants. But there's still rivalry.
We can stand with any supporters. We've been to Castleford, even Hull.
It's tougher, it's better than rugby union.
It's more better than football.
I like looking at the players. There's some nice players with nice legs.
Physical contact on the field and not in the stands.
There are moves in rugby league that are very reminiscent of contemporary dance. We don't have any artistic thing to go and look at, but we have this game of rugby league, which is an art form in itself as well as a sport.
The referee, he gets total respect and he has total control on the field. There's no rushing to the linesman to call him foul names to try and influence it. Every player is exhausted when he comes off. He gives everything he's got.
The fact that you can know the players, go up to them after the game, pat them on the back and say, well done, and just thank him for representing the place where you live, and say how proud it makes you to watch that sort of thing. It is special. It's a very special game.
It is also an expression of values, a declaration of a society which has learned to laugh at itself.
No blood bins in them days. If there'd been blood bins in my day, I'd have been stood on my home all Sunday afternoon. Well, I've never had a standing ovation. The nearest I've had to a standing ovation, I once got a slow hand clap at Featherstone. And I got an MBE in 1985, and I'd retired in 84, and I happened to visit the ground, and an old whack said, "By God, Thompson's has got the just rewards at last." He said, "MBE," he said, "makes a balls of everything."
People like Frankie Foster. Frankie played for Old Kingston Rovers, great player. I was the captain of St Helens, and he was the captain of Old Kingston Rovers. And we're walking down the tunnel. I've got the ball in my left arm, and he's got the ball in his right. And he's got his right elbow free. And as we're walking down the tunnel, not on the pitch, the game hadn't started, and he smacked me in the nose with his elbow. And I turned round and said, "Frank, what's that for?" He said, "That's nothing to what you're going to get when you get on there."
Kevin Ashcroft was a great character, you know. And of course, in the old days, as you know, it wasn't as gentlemanly as it is today. And the first scrum always erupted into a bit of a fracas, because everyone missed the space. And I remember sorting it all out, and there was just one body on the floor. And I just says to Kevin, I says, "Kevin, what's the matter with him?" He says, "Sunstroke, sir." Well, I thought, if you ask an hooker a silly question.
It is then much more than a game. Because of the way it was conceived, it took on a greater significance in the community than that of a mere pastime. It came to symbolise the difference, real and imagined, betwixt the hard-nosed north and the soft-bellied south. It became, most of all, a state of mind.
I think rugby league has been seen not just as a sport, but to some extent, right from the start of the code, as a political struggle. It's been about a fight against certain forms of oppression, in particular oppression by the establishment in this country, who have, right the way through from 1895, hated the very existence of the rugby league. Regardless of what some of the rugby union fraternities say, they detest everything that rugby league stands for.
An obscure man writing for a London evening newspaper some time ago who said Londoners will never take to this game because, as far as we're concerned, it's played by ape-like creatures watched by gloomy men in cloth cap. One wonders what sort of antisocial disease people like this are suffering from, but it tends to be pathological. And I have to say that the feeling is very often returned by rugby league. They have a huge contempt for the soft South.
I believe that we've been kept below stairs. I'm not a raging politician who goes on about class distinction and social divides, but if you truly look at the history of our game, I'm afraid we have been prevented from expanding. If great players like Alex Murphy and Billy Boston went in to do their time in the forces, they had to play rugby union. That's absolutely sinful, the fact that you weren't allowed to play our game. Were we some illegitimate cousin of rugby union that no one wanted to talk about?
How crazy it was that you couldn't talk with rugby league players in our day, after the war and so on. I mean, imagine me not being able to see and talk with Billy Boston, the incomparable Lewis Jones, David Watkins who went to Salford, or any of the players like that. You know, it was crackers.
Just as rugby league was comfortably settling down for another 100-year siege, Rupert Murdoch decided to intervene. He caused the biggest upheaval in the game since it broke with Union by proposing a Super League with boundaries extending far beyond the M62 to London, Paris, Sydney and Auckland. He bought rugby league for £87 million and caused a right palaver.
Rugby League chairmen have voted today for a revolutionary 14-team Super League to begin next March. The league will comprise the English...
It was quite unbelievable. I mean, I once turned on TV and it was second lead on CNN News, which staggered me. 6 o'clock news on BBC, you know, we were being talked about. And when, I think about an hour and a half was given of parliamentary time to discuss rugby league, well, I mean, in my wildest dreams, I never would have envisaged that.
Mr. Murdoch's plans were based on the need to find a simple and exciting sport to feed his television networks throughout the world. In straight business terms, the deal was irresistible, but it meant a radical rethink of the game's traditions. In future, rugby league will be played in the summer, in order that it might run concurrently with the Australian season. The Super League of 12 teams was a good idea only if you're one of the chosen. But what about the clubs down below, like Widnes, Featherstone, Hull and Wakefield, once the nurseries of the game, now cast aside? How would they face up to the next 100 years?
Over the last 15 years, this area has been decimated in terms of its industry. 20,000 jobs relating to the coal industry have gone from the Wakefield district. What has been left, of course, is sport. And when anyone threatens our sport, and we're talking here about rugby league, the community reacts with great anger. And the whole issue in recent times about super leagues and mergers has all been about people attempting to hang on to that local identity, their local club, which has been of so much importance over the last few years.
I'm very fond of rugby league, I'm very fond of blues music. If I want the authentic voice of blues music, I would listen to what's coming out of Clarksdale, Mississippi and those places. If I want the authentic experience of rugby league, I would go to Featherstone or Dewsbury or Widnes. I don't want some fake sport put on me.
The game badly needed this sort of lift, and it badly needed substantial funding from some fairy godmother. It has been dying this last few years financially, economically. Quite a number of clubs, I think, we're not going to see the year 2000. Whether Mr. Murdoch is the best man to be adopted as the fairy godmother, I'm not too sure. And the trouble with rugby league is that it has been based to an incredible sort of sentimental degree on loyalty. And my fear is that if Murdoch doesn't get the figures, the accounting figures that he wants out of it, he might ditch it. And I'm not quite sure where rugby league would go from there.
In keeping with the new image of the game, the league changed its headquarters from a seedy part of Leeds to a handsome mansion on the outskirts. Maurice Lindsay, the chief executive, has enthusiastically promoted the new deal. There were some who accused him of selling out.
Of course it hurt. It hurt me basically because I do love the game, but I didn't change because I was convinced that what we were doing was right for the game. We had to and wanted to accept this offer. I think people will always have picked up the ball and run with it. That's how the game first started, isn't it? But it wouldn't have been a game that you could have taken to the world. I think our days of expansion were numbered. I think the question of our survival was a question. And I think the offer that's come from News Corporation and B-Sky B has given us a financial lifeline, and it's up to us now to make sure that it works.
So in a way it was an offer you couldn't refuse?
There's no doubt about that. People who argued against it were really arguing illogically. They were clinging to a dream, but the honest truth was that the money didn't exist to pay for those dreams.
Will it succeed? Well, I suppose the larger question might be what the changes mean to the game and its supporters. To discover the future of rugby league, it's necessary to understand its past. The first Challenge Cup final was in 1897 at Headingley, when Batley, the gallant youths as they were called, beat St Helens 10-3. Broughton Rangers, long defunct, were the first winners of League and Cup in 1902. 4 years later, to improve the game as a spectacle, Northern Union decided to reduce the number of players in a team from 15 to 13. Albert Goldthorpe, our Albert, captain and inspiration of the great Hunslet team, which won all 4 cups in 1908, the first team so to do. 7 years later, Huddersfield became the second team to win the Grand Slam. This was the team of all the talents, led by Harold Wagstaff, one of the game's first superstars, the Prince of Centres. By now, the game had established its own stars and its own vigorous identity. It changed its name from Northern Union to Rugby League, but it remained resolutely entrenched in the North Country. Cup finals were played in either Yorkshire or Lancashire. The 1928 final between Swinton and Warrington was played at Wigan. Next year, the cup final moved to Wembley. The significance was not lost on the Manchester Guardian, which reported, "Most rugby union players will be grateful to the authorities for showing them the Rugby League Cup final, although it made the average Southern club game look weak and watery." The reporter was particularly taken by Jim Sullivan, the Wigan captain. "Such kicking has rarely been seen in the South," he said. Or anywhere else for that matter, because Sullivan was the most prodigious goal kicker the game has ever seen. Rugby League preserves its heroes. Harold Young, who toured Australia in 1928, played with Jim Sullivan. Today, he is 95, the oldest living British Lion. I talked to him at the Odsal, home of the former Bradford Northern, now Bradford Bulls, in the company of another veteran, 80-year-old Trevor Foster.
You're two extraordinary examples of this game. Is it something in the game that makes you live so long and be so wonderfully fit and agile?
I want to be. I don't booze. I don't carry on.
What does carry?
I'm a teetotaler for a start.
We trained Tuesdays and Thursdays then, and I enjoyed training just as much as I watched the playing. I couldn't get quick enough, and I enjoyed the training, that part of my life, which kept me in good health, I suppose.
Both men came to league from union and have lived all their lives with the long-standing feud.
It was like day and night. Rugby union and rugby league, they hated each other. That's no kid. If you talk about rugby league to rugby union,
It took a war to bring the two codes together. 2 matches between union and league were played under union rules. Trevor Foster took part in both.
On this great ground, during the war in 1944, Rugby Union played the Rugby League, the pick of the forces, Army, Navy and Air Force. And it was a great occasion that this should happen. And there were 15,000 people here. And the game was very, very good. They were stronger in certain departments, line-outs and things like that. Great stars played, and it was a great occasion.
The privates, corporals and gunners of Rugby League took on the captains and the majors of Rugby Union and beat them at their own game. After the war, when peace broke out, Rugby League and Rugby Union resumed hostilities. Not that it mattered to the breakaway game. The post-war years brought huge crowds to Rugby League. The 1954 Cup final replay between Warrington and Halifax had an official attendance of 102,000 people. Some say it was more like 120,000. In any event, it is still the largest crowd ever to see a rugby game of either code anywhere in the world. If ever the game was right for expansion, it was now.
The grounds were packed, and Rugby League didn't see any further than that. They were very, very smug, and because everything was okay in the backyard, we didn't need somehow a national concept or an international concept. We were making money. I think Bill Fallowfield, Rugby League's chief executive way back in the 50s and the 60s, he was the first man who really appreciated that we had to burst out of the North. And he was the first man who actually embraced the contracts with the BBC television. It's interesting, actually, in the first season when that occurred on Grandstand, Wigan actually were prepared to go on strike rather than be on Grandstand. And in fact, Wigan refused entry to the cameras and locked them out. Look at the difference now. But that was the mentality.
The key and controversial figure in television's attempt to turn a North Country ritual into a nationwide entertainment was a commentator called Eddie Waring. It is difficult to quantify the effect television has had on Rugby League. It is easier to assess what television did for Mr. Waring. It made him a star.
1 ton of rugby you're looking at there. Meat, brawn, muscle, brain, a lot of it. Up and under. Steve Crooks, it's a beauty up and under. And it's a try. Big George going for the early bath, as they say. And away he goes.
They hired Waring because he was sort of Mr. North Countryman personified, belly laughs and all, you know. And it dawned on Eddie, I think, at some stage, that as far as his employers, the BBC, were concerned, he was regarded as the entertainment.
Did you know there are 9 verses in El Climo Batap? I can sing them all too.
If that thing down there moves, it'll be his head, not the ball. I mean, it must have rolled him in the aisles in Peckham and North London. But up here, they thought, you know, we can do without that sort of thing. And we don't like being caricatured in the North. Nobody likes being caricatured. And I'm afraid Eddie produced a sort of caricature of Northern man. And so I was one who thought we could have done better.
I personally think Eddie Waring did more for rugby league than any other man that's ever been involved with rugby league. And I think without Eddie, in the early days, there would have been no rugby league as we know it. A lot of people thought Eddie was a clown and he was wrong for the game. He wasn't the best commentator in the world. But I always think that sport's about enjoying it anyway. And why shouldn't Eddie be a little bit different than somebody else? So anybody who knocks him in front of me, I'm afraid, will not get no change. He was a great man, and I think people should give him credit for what he's done for the sport, because without it, there would have been no rugby league.
Eddie Waring was the voice of rugby league for more than 25 years. There were crucial times for the game as it tried desperately to break out of its northern headquarters and conquer new territory.
If you want to win 10 guineas, you've got to pick who you think is the best player on the field. You send in your entry, and I'll tell you about that later. It's a Radio Times sponsored thing, and if you can't remember the player's names, take notice of his number. It's a lot of bad playing the ball.
You have to admit, whatever was thought about the salesman, there was little wrong with the product.
And Boston's into the corner for a try, the first try of the match. There he is. What a great match winner this Boston is. Now entry to Ashton. Ashton's got Boston, and Boston's into the corner. And the crowd love this, the home crowd, to give Wigan a 6 points to 0 lead. Bolton. Nice kick. Nice kick, and Boston's chasing it in the middle of the field, and it may score if the ball doesn't go over the line. And he scores. He does. He does. Oh, there's a happy Boston. Well taken. And away goes Murphy. Murphy, the skipper, RAF boy, and away goes Murphy. Away sails over in that brilliant fashion. What a brilliant footballer Murphy is. Reyes, it's Owen to head it. And it's still going. Round behind, geared it up for the post for the try by Alec Murphy, a very gleeful Alec Murphy. Get it back to Torres, looking inside for Whiteley, looking inside for Murphy. Murphy going through nicely on his own. Murphy going on his own, and Murphy's going to score. There's the scorer, Alec Murphy, the greatest scrum half in English football today, and a match winner without any doubt. And Round is there to take the cover, and Round is running nicely. He's got Neil Fox inside him. What can Neil Fox do? Neil Fox is going over for a try. Nobody will catch him, but it will be too late if they do. Round behind the post for a grand try to Neil Fox. Simple as that. Just that simple. Peter kick, left leg, and the flags are up. Away goes Hurst. He's got one man to beat. He does. Oh, he does! Fox is going in. He'll drive into the corner. He'll score. He scored. Ball possession, so important. Large. Vollenhoven. Vollenhoven from Large. Large is being chased by Ashton. And Large gets it. Large gets it. Gives it to Vollenhoven. And Vollenhoven's in behind the post for a sensational try. And it puts the ball down behind the post. A length of field movement. And nobody knows who's going to take it. This is the trying to goal here could do something. Oh, he's going over for a try. He's going to score a try. It's a try. Sensational last-minute try. Tentrace, the last-minute try. 11-10, and all on this goal. And down Fox City. What a grandstand finish this is. He's missed it! He's missed it! No, it's on the ground, he's missed it! Well, and there goes the whistle for time. What a dramatic, everybody's got the head in their hands, and he's sure in tears, he's in tears. He's a poor lad.
I can't speak, I'm not upset. Anyway, I've got some tremendous news for you that I know you don't know yet. You have been awarded the Lance Todd Memorial Trophy for the outstanding player on the field. Thank you, David. Any consolation to you? Not really, no.
Sullivan, and can he go? Sullivan, can he go? I think Sullivan will go off into the field. I don't think anybody's going to catch him. Everybody's saying go, 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 and he goes for a try. Great Britain have won the World Cup. 6 tackle coming up. It's a try! It's a try! Try! It's a good shot! Try! He's in trouble. Oh, he's not. He's got his pass out. Lovely. Oh, wonderful way he got the ball away. 6 tackle coming up. Gonna have a drop. Gonna have a drop. He's got to go with his left foot. So there it is. Back to David Coleman in the Grandstand studio. It's all yours, David.
And for the last time in Grandstand, we say the commentator was Eddie Waring.
Eddie Waring did his final commentary in 1981, leaving rugby league very much as he had found it. The game remained firmly planted in its own backyard. The trip to London was its only excursion away from home. While we were singing Il Climor and Abide With Me, much as we had always done, they were dancing to a different beat 12,000 miles away.
You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone.
In the 80s, the Australians started selling and playing a kind of rugby different to any we had seen before.
Oh, it's a good high ball. Here's a chance, Melmaninga. Oh, and what power, what size, as he handed off number 4, Lesdale, and Melmaninga, the huge burly Queensland centre, puts Australia in the lead by 5 points to 2. Wayne Pearce, what a fine physique this boy's got. And Kenny, oh, well, that was a weak tackle. And these Australians are literally ripping holes through this Great Britain cover. The first test at Boothbury Park at Hull, and I was commentating, and the game was going along. Australia were in the lead. And then all of a sudden, the second row, Wayne Pearce, the Australian second row, from 50, 60 yards out, suddenly burst straight through the British defence, raced right round the full-back and put the ball under the post. And there's that man, Wayne Pearce. What a try. A combination, a front row forward play. Craig Young struggled through, passed it to this sprinter, Wayne Pearce, who did the rest. And here was, to my mind, a new athleticism. Here was a new style, if you like. Here was a new generation. The Australians, they were fit and they knew exactly what they were doing. We were just standing and watching. Full time, into injury time now. Greg Brentnell, 1 man, 2 man, he goes past. Oh, it's too easy. It's too easy.
Teams from down under had been coming here since 1907. The New Zealanders were the first. Albert Henry Baskerville founded the International Rugby League and led the All Golds in 1908. The Australians came a year later. Some liked it enough to stay. Albert Rosenfeld joined the team of all talents, He was the first in a never-ending line of great coaches and players from the Antipodes who had a determining influence on the British game. It was two-way traffic. This private footage shows the 1936 Lions whooping it up down under. But any sporting contest between Australia and Great Britain is unlikely to be a mere jaunt. The two nations were put on earth to kick lumps off one another. In the history of rugby league, the British Lions tour of 1958 has a special significance. It produced the so-called Battle of Brisbane, and a display of courage by one man still talked about today.
When people say to me, who was the bravest man that's ever been in rugby league, it's got to be Alan Prescott.
There's the incident. Davies' head hits the right arm of Alan Prescott and it's broken, but his teammates don't know at this stage.
Not only did the guy stay on in tremendous pain, and he must have been in some pain, that he took actually physically part in the whole 80 minutes. He went behind the player, the ball acting half-back, and it must have been killing him.
And the referee pulls up play for a knock-on from the scrum. It's a Great Britain try. They move splendidly there. A great move between Corralius and Murphy 13 scores the try. This has been a tremendous effort by Great Britain, playing a man short and their captain playing with a broken arm. In the second Rugby League Test match is over. This is a test that will live long in the memories of those who saw it. One of the greatest wins on the part of any team.
I think the only way to play sport is to win. Now, at the end of it, when you've won, you can shake hands. And sometimes you have to be a loser. I understand that as well. The Australians hate being beat.
While we celebrated the legend of Brisbane, the Australians set about making sure that in future, blood and guts would not be sufficient to beat them.
They realised that they were a long way behind our game. So they took it right. They started from the bottom and worked up. And one thing you've got to admire about these people, once they decide to do something, they only want to do it until they've won. And now they're kings of the world.
Number 9. Walters, the good ball to Renouf. Renouf's in at the corner. Oh, it's a try! A try for Australia! The world champions! 1992, the World Cup.
They brought a dynamism and a colour to the game that didn't exist in our game. We were a pale, wan, dull sport. They were vibrant, exciting, full of character. It was a quality wine against a dull, cheap wine.
They've got to a situation now where they are streets ahead of us in skill factor and fitness factor. They're just a lot better than we are, and it's scary to realise that no matter how hard we've tried over the years, we've still not been able to catch them, because we play A, too many games, and we play B, we play in a bad part of the year. We just play when nobody else wants to play, really. Having played over there now, I realise that we've got a long way to go if we want to catch them.
Oh, interception by Meninga. Now then, has the 34-year-old got the pace to go the length of the field? I don't think he has. Martin Offiah's got him, but Andrew Ettingshausen has. He's in at the corner. But Australia want to quick play the ball. They get one. To Fickler. Fickler turns inside to Mullins. Mullins going towards the line. And he's over. And a try. Australia running riot here in this first half. What a player, what a team. Victorious with the Ashes trophy again.
There's no doubt that their imagination, their flair, their dynamism, their preparedness to try things new set them aside from us in sporting terms. And their influence on the game has been enormous. They've turned the game round for us.
For all their ambition and razzmatazz, for all the Australians have won the last 4 World Cups and are favourites to make it 5 in a row, there's one title they cannot claim. The most successful and the best team in all rugby is English.
Gregory, looking for support. Good break to Gregory. To Botticher. It's Panaper. Superb try. And so Andy Gregory takes the World Club trophy, and Wigan become the World Club champions.
And that's a wonderful title for the club and the town to be able to assume. I believe there is considerable truth in that. I talk to people in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and when Wigan comes up, there's a reverence. There's a magic in the town it's hard to define. It didn't have an awful lot going for it, but the rugby league club was the fulcrum of the town. It was called Central Park. It's right in the centre of town. Everybody lived around the stadium, became part of the rich tapestry of the town. It became part of the culture. And throughout its history, it's produced wonderful athletes.
Beautiful ball from Kenny, which puts Stevenson in space with Gill outside him. He's only got Campbell, the fullback, to beat. He's got the strength, he's got the speed, and he's beaten him. Oh, as good a try as we'll see. All made for Henderson Gale by that beautiful pass from Kenny. But look at Lydon go here, reminiscent of those two great tries when he won the Lance Todd. He's got Hanley inside him. He's going all the way. What a try! That must be one of the all-time great tries at Wembley.
Hampson. And this is what Wigan can do. They can suddenly strike. He's got Hanley on his outside. Now then, has he got the speed? Has he got the strength to go? He's got Gregory with him. Edwards. A magnificent tackle, but Preston's in. He's in. Oh my word.
Here they are coming back. Oh, and Jason Robinson, a magnificent run. Completely splits the Leeds defence. Wonderful try. He's something to prove as Jason Robinson.
And still we ask ourselves the question, who can beat them? When will they be beaten?
It was a pool full of big fish, so we never really got in each other's way. There wasn't one big fish shoving everybody else around. There was a lot of quality players, a lot of high-class players that knew how much space and how much time everybody else needed. So it was like a big family atmosphere. Everybody was really close. We was all good friends, and everybody was willing to play for everybody. They've worked that much harder than everybody else, and they're that more dedicated to what they're doing. And when you've got 15, 17 of the best players in the country playing for one team, then you're going to have success.
You're a great Wigan fan, and you've seen various great Wigan teams.
I am with a sinking heart more and more these days.
Why is that?
Well, Michael, sport to me is not primarily about your team winning. And I've been a Wigan supporter ever since 1946 and a season ticket holder for many, many years. Sport, above all, is about a contest with a fair degree of unpredictability. And I would much rather see my team lose by 4 points than win by 40. I really would. They are a wonderful, wonderful team. They are almost certainly the best club side in any form of football since possibly Liverpool FC were in their heyday under Shankly. And that's saying an awful lot. They are brilliant, there's no question of it, but it's getting boring.
We owe it to Wigan for rescuing the game, and I think without the Wigan revival and phenomenon, we would have been sunk. So we owe them a debt, but now perhaps they owe the game a debt. Perhaps somehow they've got to generously let someone else get to the top.
Perhaps Mr. Murdoch might have found a way of bringing Wigan down to earth. They might be expert at crushing their immediate neighbours, but will the Super League provide more testing opposition? Indeed, what does the Super League mean to the future of rugby league in England?
Really, all that we've got is the structure. I mean, at the moment, it's like a huge balloon that's been pumped up. We're floating up there in the stratosphere, if you like, but it can be very, very easily pricked.
We've got the greatest sport in the world. We really have. And if we sell it right and stop mucking about with it and give it to the punters who matter, we've got a great sport. The only problem is, I hope it doesn't become a gravy train for players. It's ruined soccer, and I'm not saying people shouldn't be paid. I'm not saying that. Players should be paid. But at the expense of the game, no.
They've been playing soccer players that for doing a quarter of the work that league players have been doing for years. So why shouldn't we, if we're putting our bodies on the line week in, week out, and working twice as hard as most professional sportsmen in the whole world, why shouldn't we reap the rewards?
The one worry I've got about the future of rugby league is, yes, more money will come in, but will it be at the cost of losing so much of community identity, the kind of values that I believe are inherent in rugby league, decent values, sporting values, community values, I think could be lost by more money coming into the game and the game being moved on to a much bigger scale. I see what's happened with soccer. that the kind of community values in soccer have gone by the board. They're lost forever. I don't want to see that happen with the game of rugby league.
I think inevitably it will lose some of that, but I don't think there's anything that anybody in rugby league could or can do about that. Life does slip out of our hands a little as we go along. Life does change. So we're bound to lose a little bit of it because life marches along at a furious pace. But the basic honesty and integrity and modesty of rugby league, I think, will always survive.
The elite clubs, the bigger clubs, are still getting the lion's share of the money. If they're so interested in developing rugby league, why don't they give more money to the small clubs in order for them to catch up to the bigger clubs? No, they don't want that. They don't want Featherstone, they don't want Batley. They want Leeds, Wigan, Paris, London. And they'll trivialise it, and they'll trivialise it until rugby league becomes no more than a ride at a fun fair.
I've tried for 10 years to get rugby league launched in London, and it's virtually impossible without finance. And now we've got the finance, and we can give London the game that they expect. They don't want to see a second division team scrubbing around playing second division sides. They want to see Wigan and Leeds and all the great sides down here. Now we'll give them the opportunity of seeing them.
I just hope the chairman of the club who've made this decision do realise that if it doesn't work in 5 years' time, they are responsible for our game. Nobody else, not the supporters. If it doesn't work, they've got a lot to answer for.
If at the end of 5 years it isn't a viable proposition for a multinational television company, then we have to admit that we failed. But even if that is the case, and I don't believe for a moment that it will be, we should be in far better shape and health in 5 years' time than we are now. So it won't have been a painful lesson. It will have been a cash support for us at a very needy time.
As rugby league prepares for the unknown, rugby union is facing an equally uncertain future. After 100 years of defending amateur principles, latterly without much success, after a century of banishing its players if they so much as dared to set foot on rugby league turf, the 15-man game decided to go professional.
Rugby will become an open game. There will be no...
The impetus for change came once more from the Southern Hemisphere, and again the paymaster was Rupert Murdoch. Might it be that a professional rugby union will pose an even greater threat to rugby league?
Well, union's always been a threat to league and its future. It was a threat to its presence for 100 years. I think there are many a times that they wish we'd been killed at birth, but we lasted 100 years. So with their professionalism, they're bound to have some money to spend, they're bound to be even more confident than they were before, but they'll never kill off rugby league, and we will never go back to rugby union bended knee, so we never worry about the threat from rugby union.
It could be, of course, that after 100 years, the very thing to divide rugby might reunite it. Will Mr. Murdoch's millions and his ambition to create a game for his world television audience lead to both codes coming together, playing a game called rugby?
If the Murdoch thing works, he might very well say, listen, blokes, this is bloody nonsense having two different games. It's more convenient for my television stations to have just one game. You lot, you get rid of your bloody line out, and we'll get rid of you get your scrummage sorted out, you know, and we might get unity that way. And I wouldn't say no to that. I would regard Mr. Murdoch in a warmer light than I've ever done before.
With these entrepreneurs on the scene, you never know what might happen, and if the bucks come flying in and Sky, you know, cable television come in and they want one particular sport, there's going to have to be a few strong men in union and league to either put a stop to it, or they'll have to just go with the flow.
I see no reason why they shouldn't. The one thing that I believe, if they ever get together, is that the rugby union players who have now been promised big money have got to make themselves fitter and better, and they've got to entertain. Unless it's entertaining, as rugby league has proved to be in the last 10 years, entertaining, moving the ball, making people laugh and cry and hope and despair sometimes. That's what rugby union has got to be if it's going to compete in the future with rugby league, or indeed join it. I've asked myself often, how many rugby union players who are currently playing in the 4 home countries would get into a Great Britain rugby team, rugby union, rugby league together. And quite honestly, off the top of my head, I can't think of one. I mean, I can't think of any forward who would get into a Great Britain team. And I'm reluctant to say I can't think of any backs either.
The two, to my mind, have been forced together, and I think economics and finance will force them together. You see, if you look at England alone, your great strength of your rugby league is along that M62 corridor. There are about 5 or 6 clubs who can really stand up financially. If you look at rugby union, you take out Leicester, and then you go along that M4 corridor. You've got your Wasps, your Harlequins, your Bath, your Bristol and Gloucester. At some stage, to raise the necessary finance to pay for each other, they'll have to play against each other. And what battles there would be.
Whatever the future of rugby league, the past 100 years belongs with its heroes, those characters and entertainers who perform feats of athleticism, of grace, of style, of bravery, rarely matched in any other sport. And they did so without ever forgetting where they came from. In that sense, they were true working-class heroes of a people's game. Those charged with taking the game of rugby league into the next century have a lot to live up to, no matter where the game might go, no matter how much money flows into it. It will be a hard act to follow.